Hi, I'm Barb. I want to show you a trip Craig and I took right after Christmas. It was to several bourbon distilleries in Kentucky. Come along with us. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Craig.
Hi, I'm Barb. And along with our boys, we're the Geek family. And these are our adventures. Hi, Craig and I planned this trip to Bourbon Country just a few days before we left. We'd been talking about going to the Outer Banks the week between Christmas and New Year's, but our boys bailed on us. And since they weren't going, we decided that we would do something that was more of a 21 and over crowd. And Kentucky's much closer to Ohio, so we thought we could do that and do a little shorter trip down there. Kentucky has 73 distilleries. Most of them are concentrated in a loop between Louisville and Lexington. We went to 5 of them. 4 of them were on the trail. Buffalo Trace was not. I have absolutely no idea what makes something be on the trail or not. I understand that changes year to year. We did tastings at 3 of them, and we did full tours, which include tasting at the other 2. You'll find after you do a couple of them that because of the strict rules, bourbon is pretty much made the same way, and they're not going to disclose the recipes and what's in the secret sauce. All whiskey is bourbon, but not all bourbon is whiskey. There are very strict rules around what makes whiskey bourbon. It must be over or under a given proof at points in the process. You can only use new, charred barrels. That is why you see beer and wine that is aged in bourbon barrels. I must say, I like some of that. Our first stop was at Buffalo Trace in Frankfort. By the way, Frankfort is the capital of Kentucky, just in case anybody asks. But it was called Leestown when Buffalo Trace started distilling in 1786. Buffalo Trace is the oldest continuously distilling brewery in the United States. It was one of only 4 distilleries that could legally make bourbon from 1920 to 1933. They needed bourbon for medical use. There were so many sick people during Prohibition. You could get a prescription for 3 pints of 100 proof bourbon a month. In Kentucky alone, 6 million prescriptions were written. We did a tour and tasting here. It was the best price of all the distilleries. It was free! The tour included the rack house. This is a term used for the warehouse or barn that is used to age the bourbon. It smelled really good in there. We were told that was due to the angel share. The angel share is what they call what evaporates out of the barrels. Buffalo Trace uses 5-story wooden rack houses. We learned that the degree of charring of the barrel, the floor that the barrel is stored in the rack house, and if the rack house is wood or metal, was just as important as the recipe and the aging time. When full, each barrel weighs about 500 pounds. They use gravity to roll them as much as possible. They unload uphill of the rack house entrance and load the barrels downhill of the entrance. They even have rails to move the barrels from building to building. Buffalo Trace was the first distillery to make single barrel bourbon in 1984. You are seeing Blanton's single barrel bourbon being bottled here. You can see the process is handled with care. This bourbon is $450 a bottle. No, we didn't get to taste this one. Now it's time for the bourbon tasting.
If you're shy, you're dry.
We did get to taste the Eagle Rare and the Buffalo Trace bourbon. Both were really good, but my favorite was the Buffalo Trace Bourbon Cream Liqueur. Next stop was Four Roses. we did a tasting here. The distillery came highly recommended, but we just thought it was okay. They have an interesting history and are honest about their bottom shelf past. Their bourbon was good, but didn't stand out in any other way. I mean, that's our taste. You might think something different. We expected to be at Four Roses longer, so when we left, we decided to go to the closest distillery, Wild Turkey. It hadn't been on our list of places to go, but it turned out to be one of our favorite. It was set on the edge of a beautiful ravine that overlooked the hills where barrels were booby-trapped and hidden during Prohibition. We had a very informative tasting here. We really enjoyed both the Russell Select Rye and the Russell Select Bourbon, but the big surprise was how good Wild Turkey 101 was. Everybody thinks of that as the bourbon that you got when you were in college to get drunk quick. Well, not me, but you know, the cool people. But when we tasted it and put it up against the other things we've had, it was pretty darn good, especially for the price. They have two master distillers at Wild Turkey. They are father and son. Jim Russell's the father and Eddie Russell is the son. Jimmy was the master distiller for over 60 years. That is longer than anybody else ever has been. We were lucky enough to meet him and have him sign our souvenirs. Here, I'll let you meet Jimmy and hear what he had to say to us.
Where did you say you're from? Did you say Texas?
No, near Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, Columbus.
Actually, Dublin, Ohio, but...
Beautiful handwriting.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank
I'm
you.
in Columbus a whole lot.
Oh, you are?
There's 3 restaurants up there. They have the bourbon dinners and bourbon tastings.
Which 3?
Wink and Lizards.
Oh,
We know them.
They have 3 in Cleveland and 3 in Columbus.
Oh,
And I tease them about the one in Columbus. And one of them, you know why?
why?
Where's it located?
I don't.
One downtown,
Yeah.
one right across from entrance to Ohio State. Well, they put it there
I know they closed one.
up north. But
Yeah.
they have opened up another.
Yeah. I didn't know where they had moved to.
I tease them about that. And they put it right for it's into Ohio State.
Well, he went to Ohio State.
Make sure you try it's a good thing.
Thank you. You got to root for the Buckeyes when you're there.
What's that? You know?
Next day and next distillery was Willet. It is a small family-owned distillery. We did the tour and the tasting here. We were here in December. I can imagine how beautiful it would be other times of the year. There is the distillery. There is the visitor center. There is a rack house. This building is only a few years old. When the father retired, Willet stopped distilling until the daughter and her husband took over. There are the doublers. This is where the bourbon is distilled a second time. They are known for their unique pot-shaped still. This is where it is distilled the first time. That isn't boiling, that is the yeast causing the bubbles. We enjoyed the tour because we could get up close and even taste the corn mash. There are 3 cats that call the distillery home. 2 posed for pictures for me. Now we're heading into the rack house. Love the smell. They have hams hanging in the rock house. With all that angel share, I'm sure that they are just absolutely great. Now we're on to our tasting. It was all really good stuff, and I have to say that honestly. Here we discovered how good dark chocolate is with good bourbon. Willet isn't sold in Ohio, so we brought back some good stuff in a bottle that is shaped like they're still. After all that tasting, we went upstairs to the restaurant to get some lunch. Yes, this was all in the morning. They have a great menu and a nice bar that features a wide selection of spirits. I could have spent the day watching the bartender in action. He's an artist. Next was our last distillery, Heaven Hill. It's a very large distillery, but it's still family owned. We did a high-end bourbon tasting. Of course, it was all fabulous.
Big umbrella for all these different products. We have the rights to 109 different bourbons, of which about 60 some odd are actually active, and 508 products. Now, Heaven Hill is owned by the Shapiro family. Now, the Shapiro family started Heaven Hill Springs Distillery in 1935, after Prohibition. You may have not realized, but in Nelson County here, before Prohibition, we had 37 distilleries. You talk about running down the streets, we were. But when Prohibition came along, there were none. Legally, that is. Yeah, you know how that works.
We bought a single barrel Elijah Craig. That is the proof that it comes out of the barrel. Normally Elijah Craig is 90 proof. It isn't shipped, so you can only purchase it here. Cheers, and thank you for watching.